Tomorrow, on June the 12th, Microsoft is going to have a presentation showing off and possibly revealing a number of games that will release in the near future. One of the games expected to be shown off is Forza Motorsport 2022? Well, I at least hope it comes out this year. Regardless, it's one of the few games I'm looking forward to and one I'm also the most worried about. Forza as a franchise has certainly had its ups and downs, and this next title being a supposed reboot only makes any speculation about how it could differ from previous installments all the more difficult. With only a single day left before the game is potentially revealed, only an idiot would make rash predictions and a wish list for it. Anyway, I'm here to make predictions and a wish list for it. Part 1. Forza. One thing I want to get out there right off the bat is that it is pronounced Forza. It's an Italian word meaning force, power, or strength. I mean, you don't call it pizza, do you? Just like how it's Gucci, even though it doesn't have an H, or how it's Pucci, even though it doesn't have an H, or how it's cappuccino, even though it doesn't have an H. The Italian language is quite unique. Also, is this hand thing racist? God, I hope so. Part 2. Graphics. The first thing people are going to expect out of the new title graphically is better looking cars. More polygons, shinier paint, the works. And yeah, it's definitely going to have its fair share of improvements on that front. Personally, however, I'd much rather have better looking tracks. The thing with car detail is that once you're zoomed out during a race, all those fancy details, all the emblem or the bolts on the wheels are no longer distinguishable from whatever we got with the last game. With the exception of dashboards and steering wheels thanks to the cockpit view, I'd rather they carry over a similar polygon count for cars in favor of much more detailed environments and possibly more cars on track during a race. Take Gran Turismo 7 for example. I love seeing cars in high detail for the first time and gawking at the visuals, but the moment I get into a race, the main difference from the cars in any other racing game is the amazing lighting and shaders, not the polygon count. Oh, by the way, I'm going to be bringing up GT7 a lot. Not just because it's Forza's closest competitor, but because I blew $500 on a PS5 just to be disappointed by this fucking game. I swear racing games with 7 in the title must be cursed. On the resolution side of things, console players can expect 4K on the Series X, 1080p on Series S, God I hope it's not on Xbox One, and decent enough options on PC given the amount of graphics options we got in Forza 7. Targeting 4K for Series X also means that PC players will have a much easier time running the game at 1080p with high refresh monitors, which is pretty sweet. I'm not expecting any DLSS support though, since the Xbox consoles were made using AMD hardware and DLSS is strictly an Nvidia deal. That said, it could possibly have support for FSR 2.0, which is AMD's solution to upscaling. In regards to ray tracing, I personally think ray trace reflections are a waste of resources. Just look at GT7. I have ray tracing on in this replay footage and I honestly can't tell unless I look out for small things like self-reflections on these mirrors or even that weird flickering on the car thanks to the low sample count. It's not the console's fault though. Ray tracing is really hardware intensive and there's only so many rays you can cast before the frame rate dips way too low. Hell, even in this replay, it's limited to 30 FPS. Ray trace reflections aren't even possible in race due to the same performance cost. And can you only imagine what the Series S version will be like? It'll either not have any ray tracing at all, setting it far apart from the Series X version, or it'll have a really low sample count, which isn't really good looking at all. If they do decide to add ray tracing in any form, I personally hope it'll be in the form of shadows. Both shadows on the car and the environment could improve things drastically, especially if they finally decide to implement real time of day and weather changes. Speaking of, Part 3. Weather. Simply put, more weather good. I don't want just basic levels of rain, I want fog, snow, and windy conditions as well. Combined with 24-hour real-time of day progression, I want things like air pressure and temperature to play a serious role in how the cars behave on track. When it comes to rain, one of the things GT7 does better than Forza 7 is how it handles grip on track. Forza 7 had some cool ideas on how puddles worked and how it kind of built up or dried up over the course of the race, but GT7 took it a step further and had the spots where cars drove over be a bit drier than the rest of the track width. This leads to a bit more strategizing since suddenly going inside or outside a turn to overtake another car is a lot riskier. GT7 also has different tire compounds, including a couple for rainy conditions. In Forza 7, the grip loss from rain doesn't even feel so bad, since that's probably due to its complete lack of any intermediate or rain condition tires. Can we please have more tire compounds turn 10? Please? Meanwhile, in GT7, my ass is sliding around left and right with even an all-wheel drive car, requiring some traction control. It seems like the better weather in GT7, despite it just being some rain, comes down to the options it has. As far as predictions go, my only prediction is that we will get more tire compounds, maybe, but I'm scared it'll be closer to something like we get in Forza Horizon versus anything like in Gran Turismo 7 with its multiple levels of softness and hardness, as well as the intermediate tires that I don't think will exist in Forza Motorsport. Other than that, in terms of weather, I can only dream, but let's be real here, it'll probably just be rain. Part 4. Options. As I mentioned, GT7's better rain is more likely a result of it having more options. Tires aren't where those options end though. When it comes to custom races, GT7 has Forza 7 beat. In Forza 7 you can pick a rainy variation on a track, but you can't pick how much rain there is or even when that rain hits. In GT7 you can set rain on and off in various levels throughout a timeline of the race. Even though sometimes it shows up as a literal wall in the radar, the fact that you can control the conditions so much more accurately means you can make for some unique long races where you'll have to learn to adapt as things go on. Another thing that annoys me in Forza 7 custom races is the stupid car restriction option. The moment you pick a car and race, it changes to that restriction, so anytime you want to change your car to something completely different for the next race, you gotta go into the race menu, go down to that restriction, and scroll all the way back to no restrictions. Outside of expecting them to go easier on that, another bit of GT7 I'd love for them to steal is the ability to pick which cars in your garage you can race against. Just look at this. It's a variable mix-up of some completely different cars leading to an unusual and fun race I simply can't have in Forza 7. Also, where are the qualifiers? I want the option to qualify for races. This sucks for GT7 single player too. Just let me prove that I don't deserve to be stuck behind a bunch of losers who will slam the brakes going into turn 1. Part 5. Difficulty. I'm a casual player. There, I said it. The extent of difficulty I can handle is not having any ABS, traction control, or stability management on. I usually keep the AI at the lowest level, outside of specific festival championships in Forza Horizon, despite how easy they actually are. Anyway, I want them to remove all the difficulties except for the highly skilled and hardest AI. Okay, hear me out. Forza as a franchise has built up some of the most amazing assists in any racing game, down to having the game brake and steer for you. Even though I hate some of the assists and think they're bad for the overall game, I honestly can't imagine a single person who won't be able to beat reasonably fast opponents given any number of assists they require. People like me simply won't pick higher difficulties out of pure stress and would need a push to even try. Back with the early Forza Motorsport games, I used the full driving line, ABS, traction control, and stability management. It wasn't until Forza 4 that I decided to let go of all of those in favor of slowly learning how to actually handle a car, since I was tired of how little I got as rewards for a race compared to people who use no assists at all. That same motivator isn't there for AI difficulty in Forza 7, since going from newbie to average is a 0% bonus. At this point, rather than wishing for them to rebalance percentages, I simply want them to rework difficulty to be centered around assists rather than AI. On that note, I actually kinda like the mod system Forza 7 had. Not as the weird RNG of a role the shop has, but the concept itself. Convincing players to turn off assists in order to earn massive bonuses to credits earned was really cool. I have an idea for what could make the mod system work, so let's just get to Part 6. The campaign. While I'm sure Turn 10 have been working real hard on a good campaign structure for their next game, I want to focus on what I just said about mods and try to work them into how it could actually benefit overall currency progression. The main thing holding back mods, outside of the RNG aspect of acquiring them, was the limited uses. Rather than simply having mods be a risk-reward system, they were instead used as part of the initial loot box system the game originally went for, having mods that essentially gave free bonuses be the jackpots for those boxes. For the next game, I'd adore a system where the mods are permanent but start at a low tier. You would also only get one of each mod. With this, you can have each forced assist as a separate mod, as well as a generic bonus mod for those who use all assists, with a set number of slots to allow for a reasonable amount of them. Then you can simply have them all start off at the lowest tier, only to tier up and offer higher percentage bonuses as you reach specific points in the campaign. This way you can have people earn more credits as they get further into the campaign, allowing them to buy the faster cars required in those later stages. This also means you can have people freely go back to old events and earn a reasonable amount, as direct race rewards can remain the same throughout the entire campaign. This would also even balance out the custom races, as those payouts would also hinge on the mod bonuses. In terms of actual predictions, I think there would be a certain level of management in which races you'll do next. Maybe a calendar system where you have the choice between a couple races. It just seems obvious in a reboot they're most likely trying to have taken more seriously. Part 7. Race types. Normal races are cool. Dirt races are cooler. Turn 10 has a history of saying they won't add features to their games until they can pull it off at a solid 60 FPS. I feel like the current gen consoles have finally reached a stage where the more complex physics and visuals involved in racing on dirt would be possible. Now is the perfect time to strike that specific niche, as GT7 finally dropped the ball with its physics in dirt races. Seriously, look at this. It's a constant mess with the car bouncing and sliding at God's mercy. I rarely ever feel like I have control and I can't pick up any reasonable speed before the various bumps and jumps turn into a random number generator that ranges from 0 to crash. Thankfully, Turn 10 have an ace up their sleeves, the built-up work from Playground Games. Say what you want about the Horizon games, but despite everything, the franchise is one of the few to make dirt racing feel good. Sure, there's tons of big ramps and hills everywhere, but I feel like that's because the devs know you can safely take large jumps without becoming Satan's bouncy ball. With just a little more work to ensure the more complex physics of their next game won't interfere with things too harshly, the next Forza could very well kick things off in a long line of fantastic dirt tracks for future titles. Part 8. Customization. Not much to expect here. I'm just gonna parrot the community and saying we need more customization than just the Forza arrow. This is another reason why I think recycling car models from past games is a good idea. Less time modeling cars, more time modeling bumpers, side skirts, and spoilers. Actually, one thing GT7 has that Forza doesn't is customizable driver gear liveries. Imagine the Weebury.
Imagine the Miku takeover.
Part 9. Damage! Okay, as much as I love seeing cars being torn to shreds, the harsh reality is that it's becoming harder and harder for devs to convince car manufacturers to allow for any visual damage at all on their cars, especially with the insane number of cars in games like Forza have. So on that front, don't expect the generational leap to result in any more visual damage than we already have. Instead, I'm hoping for a better physics damage model. It was probably my biggest complaint in Forza Motorsport 7, since you'd either take no damage at all or 100% damage. The lack of a middle ground in damage meant that you never really felt the negative side effects of more minor impacts and only got messed up when the crashes were strong enough to completely mess up one of the corners of your car. A more linear damage system would do wonders in convincing people online to avoid just ramming people. Okay, no, it won't. Part 10. Cars. Lots of cars good. A 5-year dev time means that even if they do remodel every car, there'll still be a good number at launch. I'm expecting them to shoot for at least 400, since that seems to be like the bare minimum for people to be okay with. If they decide to recycle car models, however, expect a number to rival Forza 7. More importantly than just number, though, is variety. I'm personally expecting to see a decent amount of race disciplines represented just like before, but I'm concerned about whether the number of cars, as well as the most recent models, will be up to many racing fans' strict standards. I'm just a casual fan though, so as long as I get my JDM fix, I'll be sated. Part 11. Online. GT Sport had a great system where players would be graded on both skill and safety. It's another thing I'd love for Turn 10 to steal for Forza, though honestly as a casual player, I couldn't care less about online. A couple more things though I'm sure the hardcore fans are asking for are A. Qualifying, which I absolutely want for single player as well, and B. Maybe something like iRacing where you have a race calendar and you have to pick and choose between races to do at certain times, though hopefully without the overpriced model of iRacing. Fuck iRacing. To wrap things up, I'm not expecting massive changes despite this being a reboot. There's only so much devs can do to change up the game before the publisher steps in to tell them to make some safer plays. Or worse, copy from Horizon. The only thing I haven't mentioned that I'm afraid of is the potential for this to be a game as a service. Forcing them to work on this one game and constantly trying to squeeze out more profit from it would not only lead to poor pricing options with future content, but also limit what they can do for future generations as it would all be tied down to this one base they've built. Here's hoping for the best, and I'll absolutely make a follow-up video to tomorrow's reveal to show the world how stupid and wrong I was. Also, sorry for this video being so low quality as well. I didn't even know if I was going to make a video like this, so I rushed something out last minute with almost no editing. Still, it was fun sharing my opinions with you all, so don't be afraid to hit that dislike button. Thank you for watching.